Brennan stepped onto his porch with a mug of coffee and froze. 3 figures. They were huddled under a threadbare quilt on his porch in the biting pre-dawn chill. A woman and 2 small children. Frost glittered on the worn boards around them, sharp as scattered diamonds. The stars were just fading to gray, and the air was thin and cold, the kind that burns your lungs on the way down. The woman's eyes snapped open. They weren't just tired. They were feral, exhausted, and defiant all at once. A cornered animal. Cole's hand tightened on the hot mug. He hadn't seen strangers on his land in 8 years. Not since Mary. He hadn't wanted to. His ranch was a fortress against the world, a place he'd built to hold his grief, and nothing else. The boy stirred first, maybe 8 years old. His face was pale, thin, and smeared with dirt. The little girl, smaller, maybe 4 or 5, was clutched tight against her mother's chest, still lost to the cold sleep. The woman's hands, wrapped around the quilt, were raw, cracked, and bleeding. Her boots were worn clear through at the toes, the leather shredded. She didn't beg. She didn't cry. She just stared at him, a desperate challenge in her eyes. "We won't trouble you long," she whispered. Her voice was a dry rasp, like a crow's call. "Just till sunrise, just till the cold breaks." Cole's jaw worked, but no words came out. The silence stretched, long and thin, long enough for a lone coyote to call from the ridge, its voice echoing in the vast emptiness. This was his emptiness. He'd earned it. He could send them away. He should send them away. A man alone, a man who had walled himself off from the living, didn't need complications. He didn't need people. But her eyes. Beneath the fear, her eyes held something he recognized. Desperation, yes. But also that bone-deep exhaustion, the kind that comes from carrying the entire world on your back for too long, with no place to set it down. The kind he saw in his own shaving mirror every single morning. He'd built this silence for 8 years. He'd protected it. "If they snore," Cole muttered, his voice rough from disuse, "I'll build them a room." He turned his back, walked into the house, and left the door hanging wide open. It wasn't a question. It was an invitation, given without words, and it terrified him. The woman, Anna, hesitated. She stared at the open doorway, at the rectangle of warm yellow light, as if it might be a trap. She'd seen traps before. Then, with a slow, pained movement, she lifted her daughter. She held the child like she was made of fine glass, something precious and easily broken. She stood, her legs trembling. The boy, Sam, scrambled up. He grabbed a small, worn wooden horse from under the quilt and darted after his mother. Cole didn't look back. He couldn't. He stood at his stove, staring into his coffee mug as if it held the answers. His hands, he noticed, were trembling. The first strangers in his house since Mary died. The first since the baby, a boy who never drew breath, died with her. What in God's name had he just done? Behind him he heard the soft, hesitant shuffle of ruined boots on his floorboards. He heard the woman's quiet, shaky breathing. He heard the little girl let out a sleepy, confused whimper. The heavy oak door closed with a soft, final thud. The silence of his house, the silence he had curated for 8 long years, wasn't silent anymore. Cole turned, his face a mask of iron. He pulled 4 plates from the cabinet. 4. He hadn't set 4 plates on this table in nearly a decade. The very act felt like a betrayal. He slammed them down. Bacon, biscuits left from yesterday, reheated. He poured coffee for the adults, and milk, precious milk from his 1 cow, for the children. The children just stared. They stared at the food like it was a mirage, something that would vanish if they blinked. The boy, Sam, swallowed hard, his throat clicking. The little girl's eyes went wide and round. Eat, Cole said. The word came out gruffer than he meant, more like a command than an offer. They ate. The children didn't just eat, they devoured. They fell on the food like starving wolves, barely pausing to breathe, their small hands shaking as they stuffed biscuits into their mouths. Cole had to look away. The woman, Anna, ate slowly. Her movements were stiff, watchful. Her gaze never settled, flicking from Cole to the door, back to Cole. She was a hunted animal, expecting the trap to spring at any second. Cole focused on his own plate. The sounds in the room were deafening. Chewing, swallowing. The scrape of forks on the plates. It felt as loud as thunder in his quiet, empty house. When the plates were empty, scrubbed clean, the woman stood without a word. She gathered the dishes and went to the dry sink. She began to wash. "You don't have to do that," Cole started, feeling awkward. "Yes, I do." Her voice was firm, though her back was to him. She wasn't asking permission. She worked with a grim efficiency, her movements quick and practiced. He watched her hands, rough and capable. They were the hands of someone who knew work, and knew it well. As she worked, she instinctively began to organize his chaotic counter, stacking things, wiping down surfaces he hadn't properly cleaned in months. "Name's Anna," she said at last, her back still to him. "Anna Whitmore." She gestured with her head toward the children, who were now huddled by the cold hearth, mesmerized by the strange, quiet room. "This is Sam. That's Lily." Cole nodded. He didn't offer his own name. Not yet. "My husband died," Anna continued, her voice flat, as if she were reciting a list. She scrubbed a pan with vicious energy. "6 months ago, the mine, it collapsed, near Silverton." Cole's head lifted. "Silverton. Creditors took the house. 2 weeks later," she said, her voice dropping. We walked 3 days to get here." A beat of silence. Cole finally spoke. "Why here? Why my ranch?" Anna stopped scrubbing. She turned, wiping her chapped hands on her skirt. She finally met his eyes. And this time the pharaoh look was gone. There was just a vast, empty exhaustion. "The man at the general store, in town. I asked who lived out this way. He said you were decent. Ornery, but decent." Cole almost smiled. Almost. Ornery was right. Decent was debatable. "You got horses, mister?" The small voice broke the tension. It was the boy, Sam. He had crept closer, his eyes fixed on Cole. He was still clutching that little wooden horse. Cole looked at the boy. He saw the hope there, thin and fragile as spring ice. Cole looked past him, through the window, toward the barn he'd built with his own hands. The barn that held his 2 geldings. He just nodded. The boy's face. It lit up. It was like watching the sunrise happen, fast, all at once. The grime and the fear just melted away for a second. Cole felt something crack deep in his chest, a place that had been frozen solid for 8 long years. "Barn's got a loft," Cole heard himself say, the words feeling strange in his mouth. "It's warm. Warmer than the porch, anyway. You can sleep there. Till I figure things out." Anna's eyes shimmered. She squeezed them shut, just for a second, but she didn't let the tears fall. She was too proud for that. Or too broken. "We'll earn our keep," she said, her voice thick. "I can cook. I can mend, clean. I can work." Cole looked at her raw hands, at the exhaustion etched into her face. He looked at the half-built frame of a new woodshed he'd abandoned weeks ago. "Can you swing a hammer?" She blinked. "What?" "That room," Cole said, nodding toward the porch. "It won't build itself." Anna stared at him. She didn't understand. He wasn't sure he understood. Was he really going to build a room for them? For these ghosts? Then slowly she nodded. Just once. A deal made. Cole stood, grabbed his hat from the peg by the door. I'll inventory the timber. He walked out. He had to get out. He walked out before she could see his hands, shaking again. In the barn, surrounded by the familiar, safe smell of hay and leather and horses, Cole leaned his forehead against a rough-hewn support post. He closed his eyes. He had just invited strangers to stay, to live on his land. He had just offered to build them a home. What was he building? A room? Or was he building something far more complicated, far more dangerous? Cole was trying to measure boards in his workshop, but his hands kept pausing. Through the open window, he could hear them. He could hear sounds his ranch hadn't heard in 8 years. He heard Lily's laugh, bright and sharp as a silver bell. He heard Sam whooping as he chased the chickens, his feet pounding the dirt. He heard Anna humming, a low, soft tune as she hung laundry on the line Cole hadn't bothered to string up since Mary. His gaze drifted from the window to the doorframe of his own house, to the marks carved there. Mary, 1869. Mary, plus baby, 1870. His hand, his knife, his hope. All of it buried, right along with them. Mary had died in childbirth. The baby, a boy they were going to name Daniel, never drew a single breath. After that, Cole built this ranch as a fortress, a place where grief couldn't follow because there was nothing left to feel. A place where nothing could ever touch him again. Lily's giggle pierced through the window again. Cole's throat tightened. He slammed the measuring tape down. He grabbed his supply list and saddled his horse, fast, his movements jerky. Town was an hour's ride. He needed nails. He needed hinges. He needed more timber than he had on hand. He needed to get away from the sound of children laughing. At Everett's general store, Mrs. Pritchard was behind the counter. Her hair was pulled back so tight it looked painful, and her sharp eyes missed nothing. They'd never missed anything. Cole Brennan, she said, not bothering with pleasantries. Didn't expect to see you twice in one lifetime. Just need supplies, Eunice. So I see. She watched him load a heavy box of nails onto the counter. Heard you took in strangers. Cole didn't look up. That's so. A widow woman. From Silverton, they say. Her voice was casual, but her eyes were not. With 2 children. Folks are talking, are they? Cole kept his voice flat. Oh, they're talking. She leaned forward, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial hiss. A woman, alone, living on a man's ranch, with no chaperone, Cole, no family. It's improper. Her tone dripped with false concern, but underneath it was a thick layer of real judgment. Cole set the box of nails down. Hard. Hard enough to make the jars of candy on the counter rattle. Mind your own business, Eunice. It is my business, she snapped, her facade dropping. Propriety is the town's business. Moral character is the town's business. Silas Dorning, he's very particular about the character of this county. Cole froze. Silas Dorning, the town clerk, the man who owned the bank, the saloon, and half the land deeds in the valley. Silas Dorning has interests in Silverton, Mrs. Pritchard continued, her eyes glittering. She knew she'd hit a nerve. He likes to know who's coming and going, especially widows, from Silverton. It wasn't gossip, it was a warning. Let them wonder, Cole said, his voice low and dangerous. I've got work to do. He paid, his movements stiff. He loaded his supplies onto the mule. But as he rode home, her words gnawed at him. Interests in Silverton. This wasn't just about helping a widow. This was about choosing her, against the town, against Silas Dorning. He could still send her away. Quietly. No one would blame him. He'd be safe. He'd be alone, the way he'd been. At the edge of town, he passed the dry goods store. He saw a bolt of calico fabric in the window. Pale blue, with tiny yellow flowers. Mary used to love fabric like that. Cole tied his horse. He went inside. He bought 3 yards. For curtains, he told himself, stuffing the package into his saddlebag. For the room. He didn't stop to examine why his heart was pounding. When he got back to the ranch, the sun was setting. He walked into his house, and the smell hit him. Onions, beef, thyme. It was stew. Someone had made stew in his kitchen. The table was set. For 4. Anna had found his stores. She'd taken charge. Sam looked up from the floor, where he was examining Cole's rifle rack. Will you say grace, Mr. Brennan?" Cole froze in the doorway. His hat was still in his hand. Grace, at his table, with a family that wasn't his. He could turn around. He could take his plate and eat in the barn. He could keep the walls up. They were good walls, strong walls. He'd spent 8 years building them. Instead, he hung his hat on the peg. He sat down. He bowed his head. "Lord," he said, his voice rough and unfamiliar, "thank you for this food, and for the hands that made it. Amen." When he looked up, Anna's eyes were shining. The room wasn't his anymore. Maybe it never would be again. The next 2 weeks passed like a strange dream, a dream Cole kept trying to wake from, but a part of him, a part he thought was dead, didn't want to. The room rose, plank by plank. It was a small lean-to structure, built against the main house, with its own door and a window facing the sunrise. Foundation laid, walls framed, the skeleton of something new, taking shape. Anna insisted on helping, and she wasn't helping the way a lady would. She worked. She hauled timber. She held boards steady while he hammered, not even flinching at the noise. She mixed mortar for the small stone foundation without being asked, her measurements as precise as his. "Where'd you learn to do this?" he'd asked, impressed. "A farm doesn't care if you're a man or a woman," she'd said, not looking up. "It just demands the work." Sam became his shadow. He fetched tools, his small hands careful and eager. "The hammer, Mr. Cole. The nails." Lily was a whirlwind of light. She painted the new walls with a bucket of water and a rag, singing nonsense songs that somehow made the work lighter. One afternoon, Cole knelt beside Sam. "Time you learned." He took the boy's small hand, wrapped it around the hammer. "Hold it firm, near the end. Let the tool do the work." Sam's first nail went in crooked, bending in half. His second try split the wood. He looked up, his face crumbling, ready to quit. "Again," Cole said, his voice firm but not unkind. "Eye on the nail, not the hammer." Sam took a deep breath. He swung. Thwack! 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 The nail sank, clean and true. The pride on the boy's face. It could have lit the whole valley. I did it! Mr. Cole, I did it!" "You did." Cole put his hand on the boy's shoulder, giving it a squeeze. The contact felt strange, good, terrifying. In the evenings, they ate together. The table was always set. The house, it smelled like fresh bread, like coffee, like wood smoke. It smelled like life. Anna had found his mending basket, the one Mary had used. She sat by the fire, mending his torn shirts, her needle quick and precise. She moved around his house with a quiet confidence, bringing order to his chaos, bringing warmth to the cold spaces. One afternoon, Cole was hoisting a heavy roof beam. It was awkward. He was struggling. Suddenly, Anna was there, stepping in, her shoulder pressed against the wood. "On 3, she said. 1, 2, 3. They lifted it into place together. Their hands brushed as they positioned it. Her fingers, he noticed, were calloused now, like his. She looked at him, a long, steady look. Cole looked away, but his pulse was hammering louder than any nail. At night, he'd lie awake in his cold, empty bed, and he'd listen. He'd listen to the soft sounds from the barn loft. Anna's quiet breathing, Lily's sleepy murmurs, Sam's occasional, soft snore. The boy snored, and God help him, it made Cole smile in the dark. By the end of the second week, the room's frame stood complete. Roof joists ready, window frames cut. It looked like a skeleton, waiting for flesh. Anna stood beside him at sunset, surveying their work. Her hair was damp with sweat, a smudge of dirt on her cheek. It's almost a home," she whispered, more to herself than to him. Cole didn't correct her. He didn't say, "It's a room," because she was right. That night, long after the others were asleep, Cole took his knife. He went to the new doorframe of the room they had built. In the pale moonlight, he carved Sam and Lily, 1877. He stepped back, staring at the names. They looked like they belonged there. What was he doing? Building a room or building a family? His chest ached. It ached with a terrible, unfamiliar feeling. It was hope, and it terrified him. Tomorrow he'd start the roof. Tomorrow they'd be one step closer to finished. And he realized, with a jolt like lightning, he never wanted them to leave. Late that evening, the fire crackled. The children were asleep, finally, in the barn loft. Anna sat by the hearth, not mending, just staring into the flames, the way she'd stared at him that first morning. Cole poured 2 glasses of whiskey. He didn't ask, he just handed her one. He sat in his own chair, across from her. "You don't have to talk," he said quietly, sipping his own drink. "But I'll listen, if you do." She took the glass, sipped, and winced at the burn. She held the glass in both hands, letting the warmth seep into her fingers. "Thomas," she said finally, her voice so low he had to strain to hear it. "My husband, he wasn't a good man." Cole's jaw tightened. He just waited. Not when he drank. And he was always drinking. By the end. She took another sip, braver this time. He hit me. Twice." Her voice was flat, dead, like she'd scraped all the emotion out of the words just to be able to say them. "He terrified the kids. Sam tried to stop him once. Thomas threw him against the wall." Cole's knuckles went white on his glass. "I was ashamed," she whispered, her eyes still on the fire. "I thought it was my fault. Thought if I was a better wife, a better something, he wouldn't. I thought I deserved it. You didn't." The words were out of Cole's mouth before he could stop them. Low and rough. Anna finally looked at him. Her eyes were swimming in unshed tears. "How do you know?" "Because a man who raises his hand to his family isn't a man," Cole said, his voice like gravel. "He's a coward." Her breath hitched. A single tear tracked down her cheek, leaving a clean path in the grime. "I ran after he died," she said. "The debt was real. The creditors, they were real. But I also ran, because I was free. Does that make me a terrible person?" "Makes you human," Cole said. They sat in silence. The fire popped, a spark landing on the hearth. "Earlier today," Cole said slowly, staring at his own whiskey. "Sam, he asked if he could call me Pa." Anna's head snapped up. Her eyes were wide. "I said no," Cole said quickly. Told him Cole was fine." He swirled the amber liquid in his glass. "But I wanted to say yes." He looked at her, his gaze raw, the walls he'd built crumbling around him. "That scares me, Anna. It scares me more than anything." "Why?" she whispered. "Because wanting things." His voice cracked. He cleared his throat. "Wanting things means they can be taken away. I can't. I can't go through that again." Anna set her glass down. She reached across the small space between them, and she touched his hand. Her palm was warm, rough from work. "Real. I'm scared too, Cole," she whispered. "Every minute, but maybe that's how we know it matters." Cole turned his hand over, slowly, hesitantly. He laced his fingers with hers. They didn't kiss. It was too soon, too fragile. But the touch said everything. Outside, the wind rose, howling around the corners of the house. A storm was coming. Cole could smell the ozone on the air. Anna pulled her hand back gently. The moment was broken. Her face was troubled again. "The preacher came by yesterday," she said, her voice tight. "While you were out, hunting." Cole's stomach dropped. "Reverend Michaels, what did he want?" "To ask questions." She looked away, back at the fire. "About us, about the arrangement." She stood, pacing, her hands twisting in her skirt. "People are talking, Cole. Mrs. Pritchard. She's been telling everyone in town, that we're living in sin. We're not." Cole's voice was a low growl. "I know," she said, whirling on him. "But they don't care about the truth. They care about appearances. They care about what Eunice Pritchard tells them to care about." Cole's hands curled into fists. "Let them talk." "What if they don't just talk, Cole?" Her voice broke, and the fear was back, raw and sharp. What if they try to take the children on grounds of moral failing, put them in that orphanage in Junction City? The words hung in the air like a blade. They wouldn't. They might. Anna was pale. "Silas Dorning, the town clerk. Mrs. Pritchard mentioned him to the Reverend. Said he would take us in, marry me, make it respectable." Cole's heart stopped. Silas Dorning, the man with interests in Silverton. "Are you considering it?" Anna's eyes finally overflowed. The tears came, hot and angry. "I don't want to. He scares me. But if it keeps my children safe, if it's the only way—" "Don't." Cole stood, crossed the room to her in 2 strides. He gripped her shoulders. "Don't you dare. Don't marry a man you don't love just to satisfy a bunch of dried-up gossips." "Then what do I do?" she sobbed. "What do we do?" He wanted to say stay. He wanted to say we'll fight them. He wanted to say I'm falling in love with you and it terrifies me, but I'll protect you. Instead, the old fear, the old habit of isolation, choked him. Let me think," he said. Anna nodded, wiping her eyes. She pulled away from him, but they both knew. The storm wasn't just in the sky. It was here, and it was about to break. It happened Sunday. Noon. Cole saw them from the barn, where he'd been showing Sam how to brush down the horses. 3 riders. His stomach turned to ice. Mrs. Pritchard, sitting side saddle, her back ramrod straight. The town clerk, Silas Dorning, on a fine black stallion, looking like he already owned the place. And behind them, looking smaller and weaker than Cole had ever seen him, Reverend Michaels. Anna was already on the porch. She stood there, her arms crossed tight, like armor. Cole walked over slowly, his boots heavy in the dirt. His jaw was tight enough to crack teeth. "Mr. Brennan." Mrs. Pritchard's smile was thin and sharp, like a knife's edge. "A lovely Sabbath. Eunice, Dorning, Reverend." "We've come," Mrs. Pritchard said, not dismounting, "out of concern, deep concern, for the children." "Have you?" Cole said. It wasn't a question. Reverend Michaels cleared his throat, avoiding Cole's gaze. "Cole, the community, it worries. It worries about the moral environment here. An unmarried woman, an unmarried man, children, in the middle. "We are doing nothing wrong," Anna said. Her voice was steady, but Cole could see her hands, gripping her own arms, were white-knuckled. "Appearances matter, Mrs. Whitmore," Silas Dorning said. His voice was smooth, oily. He swung down from his horse, taking his hat off, playing the gentleman. He stepped onto the porch, too close to Anna. "I've come," Dorning said, his eyes fixed on Anna, ignoring Cole completely. "With a solution. A generous one." He smiled. "Marry me, Mrs. Whitmore. I'll take you and the children in. Give you my name. A fine house in town. It will all be respectable, proper." Cole's vision went red. He saw Anna's face drain of color. "Think of the children," Mrs. Pritchard pressed from the yard, her voice like a drill. "What kind of example is this setting? Perhaps Mrs. Whitmore and the children should relocate to the boarding house, immediately, until proper arrangements can be made." "We ain't done nothing wrong." The voice cracked like thunder. It was Sam. The boy stood in the barn doorway, his small face streaked with tears of rage. "I don't want to go. I won't go." He ran. He ran across the yard, past Dorning, past his mother, and he grabbed Cole's hand. He gripped it with all his might. "You promised!" he shouted up at Cole, his face red and desperate, breaking. "You promised you'd teach me to ride! You promised!" Cole's heart shattered. He knelt, slowly, eye level with the boy. He saw his own broken past in Sam's terrified eyes. "Don't let them take us," Sam whispered, his voice shattering. "Please, Mr. Cole, please." Cole looked up. He looked at Anna. He saw her breaking too. He saw her looking at Dorning's offer, not as a proposal, but as a sentence, a sacrifice she was willing to make for her children. This was it. This was the moment. He should speak. He should stand. He should tell Dorning to get off his land. He should tell Pritchard to go to hell. He should tell the Reverend to find his spine. He should stand against the whole town, right here, right now, and choose them, fully, publicly, irrevocably. But the words stuck in his throat. 8 years of silence, 8 years of running, 8 years of building walls. He was terrified. The silence stretched. It was a gaping wound. Silas Dorning's smile widened. He had his answer. "Mrs. Whitmore," he said, all gentlemanly concern. "Shall we discuss the terms?" Anna's face crumpled. She looked at Cole's frozen, silent form, and her hope died. I need to think," she whispered, her voice dead. "Of course," Dorning said. "We'll return tomorrow, for your answer." They mounted. They rode away. Cole stood there, still kneeling in the dirt, still holding Sam's hand. And he knew, deep in his gut, he had just failed every test that had ever mattered. That night, Anna packed. She didn't cry. She didn't yell. The silence in the house was worse than any screaming. She moved with a dull, methodical purpose, folding the few clothes they had, putting them back in the burlap sack they'd arrived with. Sam and Lily were in the barn, asleep, or pretending to be. Cole went to the new room. He worked. He worked until midnight, his hands bleeding. He hammered nails, one after another, as if he could fix his own cowardice with wood and iron. He hammered until his arm ached, until the new walls were finished, the roof was shingled, the window was set. The room was done. But the family was leaving. And it was his fault. 3 days passed. The ranch was silent again. It was the old silence, the dead silence, the silence of a grave. Cole sat in the empty room he had built. They were gone. Anna had taken the children to the boarding house in town first thing the morning after. She hadn't said goodbye. He sat on the small cot he had built, surrounded by the things they'd left behind. Lily's rag doll dropped by the door. Sam's little wooden horse, the one Cole had spent an evening carving new legs for after the old ones broke. Anna's thin shawl draped over the chair. He picked it up. It still smelled of her, of lavender and wood smoke and life. He buried his face in it. A dry, racking sob tore through him. The room was finished. Roof, walls, windows, the door frame with their names carved into it. Sam and Lily, 1877. It wasn't a home. It was a monument to his own failure. He went inside. He uncorked the bottle of whiskey he hadn't touched in weeks. He drank straight from the bottle. He heard Mary's voice echoing in his memory, her voice from that last, coherent moment before the fever took her. Don't let grief make you small, Cole. Don't you dare. Live big. Love big. For me. He had betrayed her. He had betrayed himself. He had built walls instead of a life. He stared at the half-empty bottle. Then, with a roar of 8 years of repressed rage, he threw it. It smashed against the stone fireplace, whiskey and glass exploding across the hearth. The crash was loud, satisfying, brief. Dawn broke, cold and clear. Cole hadn't slept. He stood at the sink, washing the soot and despair from his face. He looked in the mirror. The man staring back was a stranger, a coward. No more. He saddled his horse. He didn't grab a list. He didn't grab supplies. He rode to town. He rode hard. He found Anna in the kitchen of the boarding house. She was scrubbing a mountain of greasy pots. Mrs. Pritchard, no doubt, had arranged the charity work. Anna looked thin, exhausted, defeated. He pushed through the kitchen door. The cook yelled at him. He didn't care. Anna turned, a pot in her hand. Her eyes widened. Cole, I've been dead 8 years, Anna. His voice was low, rough, but for the first time in his life it was steady. I've been dead, and you and those children. You woke me up. I was a coward. I was afraid of everything. Afraid of living. He crossed the kitchen, took the pot from her hand and set it down. If the town wants to judge, he said, his eyes locked on hers, let them. If they want to talk, let them talk. But you belong on that ranch. We belong on that ranch. Tears spilled down her cheeks, hot, fast tears. Cole, they'll make our lives hell. Dorning, Pritchard, let them try, he said, a cold fury in his voice he didn't know he possessed. I'll build walls so high their gossip can't climb them. What about the children? What if they... The room's got their names, he cut her off, his voice fierce. Carved in the doorframe, permanent. You hear me? You're not temporary. You're not charity. He reached up, his rough thumb wiping a tear from her cheek. You're home, Anna sobbed. Once, a hard, painful sound. Then the back door burst open. You came, Sam. He flew across the room. Cole dropped to his knees, catching the boy in a hard hug, burying his face in his small shoulder. I came, Cole whispered, his voice thick. Should have come sooner. I'm sorry, Sam. Lily ran out next, launching herself at Cole, grabbing his neck. Can we go home now, Cole? Can we go home? Cole lifted her with one arm, kept the other around Sam. He held them both. He stood, looking at Anna over their heads. Yes, little one, he said. We're going home. Anna wiped her face. She nodded. They walked out. Together. They walked right through the dining room of the boarding house, where the patrons, including Mrs. Pritchard, were having their lunch. They stared. They whispered. Mrs. Pritchard stood, her face twisted with disapproval and rage. Mr. Brennan, this is an outrage. Cole stopped. He looked her dead in the eye. Judge her, Eunice, he said, his voice carrying through the silent room. You judge me. We're done listening. He didn't stop walking. They rode home in the wagon, the children tucked between them. The ranch appeared over the hill. Sam pointed. "Look, the room's finished." It was. And so, finally, was Cole's fear. The next morning, a wagon rolled into the yard. Cole tensed, his hand going to the axe handle by the door. But he recognized the driver. It was old Garrett from the neighboring ranch, a man as quiet as Cole himself. "Heard you were building," Garrett called out, not waiting for an invitation. "Figured you could use some help." Another wagon followed, then another. The blacksmith, Hank. Widow Allie, who'd lost her own husband the same year Cole lost Mary. Even young Timothy from the feed store. Not everyone. Mrs. Pritchard and her faction stayed away, their faces pinched with disapproval from a distance. But enough. Enough people who understood that love mattered more than gossip. Enough people who were tired of Silas Dorning and Eunice Pritchard running their lives. They descended on the new room like a barn raising. They brought paint. They brought shelves. They brought a small stove. They brought food. They worked all day. They put on the finishing touches Cole hadn't gotten to. The trim, the shelves, a second coat of whitewash. Sam and Lily painted their new walls, this time with real paint. A blue sky, a yellow sun, a brown horse that looked suspiciously like the one Sam had been riding. Anna hung the calico curtains, the ones Cole had bought. They framed the window, pale blue and yellow, like hope. By sunset, the room was complete. Beds were made. The small stove was installed. A colorful rag rug, a gift from Widow Ali, was on the floor. The children's few belongings were arranged, carefully, on their new shelves. As the sun dipped, Reverend Michaels appeared in the yard. Alone. He was walking, his hat in his hand. He stood in the doorway of the new room. I owe you an apology," he said quietly, his voice heavy with shame. "All of you. Mrs. Whitmore. The church failed you. I failed you. I let fear and judgment speak louder than grace." Anna looked at him for a long moment. Then she nodded. "Thank you for saying so, Reverend. Would you allow me," he asked, "to bless this home?" Cole glanced at Anna. She glanced at the children. Sam nodded. "All right," Cole said. They gathered in the new room. Cole, Anna, Sam, Lily, and the handful of neighbors who had stayed. Reverend Michaels raised his hand. "May this home," he said, his voice clear and strong, "be filled with love. May these walls shelter joy and mercy. May this family—" He paused and looked right at Cole and Anna. "However it is formed, find peace in Jesus' name." "Amen," they all echoed. That night, after everyone had left, the four of them stood in the children's room. Sam climbed into his new bed. It's really ours." "Really yours," Cole said. Lily hugged her rag doll. "Forever?" Anna leaned down and kissed her forehead. "Forever." They left a lamp burning low. They closed the door halfway. Cole and Anna stood in the main house. The space between them felt different, charged. "Thank you," she whispered, for fighting for us. I should have fought sooner." "You fought when it mattered," she said. She reached up, her hand cupping his rough cheek. He leaned into her palm, closing his eyes. They didn't kiss. Not yet. It was still too new. But they stood there, her hand on his cheek, his eyes closed, just breathing each other in. Outside, the stars wheeled overhead. Inside, from the new room, came the soft, unmistakable sound of children snoring. Cole smiled, his eyes still closed. "They snore," he whispered. Anna laughed, a soft, warm sound that filled all the empty spaces in the house. "Guess you'll have to keep them." "Guess I will." Spring came early that year. The snow melted fast, and wildflowers pushed up through the mud. Indian paintbrush, bright as new promises. Cole woke to the sound he'd once joked about. Soft snoring from the room next door. He smiled before his eyes even opened. Anna was already at the stove, making coffee. She was wearing one of Mary's old dresses. She'd asked permission first, her voice tentative. Cole had said yes, his throat tight. It looked right on her. He thought Mary would have approved. "Morning," Anna said softly. "Morning." They didn't need more words than that. Sam was already out, feeding the horses. Cole had taught him how to saddle them, how to check their hooves, how to read the weather in their ears. Lily had a small garden patch by the new room, tiny seeds planted in careful rows. She checked them every morning, whispering encouragement to the dirt. The ranch was alive. Chickens clucking, horses nickering, children laughing. Cole and Anna worked side by side, mending the long stretch of fence on the south pasture. They were partners in labor, in something deeper, something neither of them had named yet. Romance would come slow. It would be built on trust and shared work and quiet evenings. It would be built solid, like the room's foundation. But it would come. At noon, Sam called out from the corral. "Cole, can we ride to the creek?" Cole looked at Anna. She smiled, wiping her hands on her apron. "Sure, son," she called back. The words slipped out. Son. Natural. Easy. Sam's face lit up like the sunrise. Later, when they returned, muddy and happy, Lily ran up. "Cole, why? Why do you smile when we snore?" He knelt, pulling off his gloves. He ruffled her hair. "Because it means you're here," he said, his voice thick. "It means I'm not alone." Anna joined them, slipping her hand into his. "You'll never be alone again," she said quietly. "None of us will." Cole squeezed her hand. That evening, at sunset, Cole stood on the porch, the very same spot where he had found them, frozen and desperate, months ago. The boards weren't empty now. They were cluttered. With small, muddy boots, with Sam's wooden horse, with the beautiful, terrible chaos of life. The door to the house stood open. Warm air spilled out, carrying the smell of dinner. Through the window he could see into the children's room. Lily's painted sun glowed golden in the lamplight. He thought of the doorframe, the carving, Sam and Lily. 1877. He knew with a deep certainty he'd be adding more names to that frame someday. Maybe Anna, maybe Cole, maybe, if they were blessed, others. The room was finished, but the family was still building, timber by timber, day by day, heartbeat by heartbeat. Anna appeared beside him, leaning her shoulder against his. "What are you thinking?" she asked. Cole looked at her. He looked at the children, visible through the window. He looked at the home they had built, together. "I'm thinking," he said slowly, "that the hardest things, they're the only things worth doing." Anna smiled. Building a room. Building a life. She stood on her toes and kissed his cheek. Soft. Quick. A promise. "Then let's keep building." They stood together as the sun set, painting the sky golden and red. Inside, Sam called out. "Dinner's ready," Lily added. "Come on, it's getting cold." Cole and Anna looked at each other. They laughed. They went inside. The door closed behind them. And for the first time in 8 long, silent years, Cole Brennan was truly home. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe.